Life Rhythms with Ryan Skyy. Observing the world around me, looking inward, trying to make sense of it all.
Welcome to Life Rhythms Radio Show. I am your host, Ryan Skyy. This episode is brought to you by Mixilary.com. I'm excited to have Mixilary on as a sponsor personally because Mixilary is all about connecting people who are looking to hire a remixer. It's a platform that you can use to find and hire someone to remix your song. And why that's so important is because anybody can go online and you can search music producers, you can search for remixers, you can hire somebody, but it's like, how much do you pay them and who should you hire and what genre should you choose? And with option overload, it can be a little overwhelming to figure out what's the best use of your money. Because what it comes down to is remixes are marketing tools. A remix of a record will get that record in front of a larger audience. It will get that record played in venues and areas like the gym or a club or a car or a fitness studio, places that maybe your original song may not be appropriate for. So it is an important marketing tool, but then who remixes it is important because first of all, the quality of the remix, and also maybe they have their own audience that's going to discover this remix. Maybe they have a following. Maybe they have a radio show. Maybe they tour and they'll be playing it out live. These are all sorts of things that are important. So Mixilary is a service that will help match you with the best remixer for your budget. So check out Mixilary.com for more information on this. Life Rhythms is a radio show that revolves around my personal growth journey. As a DJ and a producer, I spend a lot of my time observing the world around me, looking inward, trying to make sense of it all. I've been doing it in song form, and now I do it on my radio show. Each episode of Life Rhythms, we feature one guest and one song or album, and I choose topics related to the guest's music for us to talk about. I'm really excited about today because I have with me the legendary Tommie Sunshine joining us today. Tommie Sunshine's a record producer, a remixer, DJ, songwriter. He started out in Chicago. And for idobi Family, he's particularly a great guest for the station because he's a rebel at heart. He's a rocker at heart. He's remixed Mindless Self-Indulgence. You've remixed Fall Out Boy. What other rock records?
Panic at the Disco.
Yeah.
Like it goes, the yeahs. It goes pretty deep.
Yeah, and there's a quote. I love this. There's a quote by XHX. They said, having DJ'd everywhere from the dirtiest rock and roll dive bar to the Guggenheim Museum, Sunshine spins a unique blend of modern rock and future-forward dance music.
I'll take it.
So we're going to take a quick break, but when we get back, we're going to talk about all kinds of stuff. We talk about how you discovered Calvin Harris. We're going to talk about what else? What were some of your highlights?
I would say, just talking about independence and just like, just being, harnessing your power, really, and just being independent of influence in any way, really, as an artist and as a person.
You've been a staple in the dance world for many years. And when people watch this conversation, they're going to understand why. They're going to understand why your career has spanned as long as it has spanned. And my goal is to get to know your mind and to share that with people. And I think we accomplished that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, I'll be back here with Tommie Sunshine right after this on idobi Radio. Welcome back to Life Rhythms Radio Show. I'm your host, Ryan Skyy. idobi Family, I've got with me in the studio today my guest, Tommie Sunshine. Tommie, welcome to Life Rhythms.
Great to be here.
I'm excited to have you. And we played a little bit of your music coming in here. To the listeners who are new to Tommie, I've got a quote here I'm going to read that'll catch you up to speed. It goes like this. This is from culture.com. They had to say this about Tommie. They said, it takes a remarkable mind to carve out an expansive, multi-decade career with little sign of slowing down. Tommie Sunshine, a man known for his long, flowing hair and proclivity to swirling, rambunctious house music, he is a legend and mainstay within dance music.
I don't know if I've heard that before. That's great.
Isn't that great? I wanted to open with that because I love how it talks about your remarkable mind, and that's what I want to get to know today, is your mind.
I appreciate that.
And you've been a staple in the dance world for years, and I feel like you're maybe like you're a perfect guest for this show and for iDopey because you're a rocker at heart.
I mean, obviously before all the dance music stuff, like grew up in the Midwest. So like, living in the suburbs of Chicago, like it was all about hair metal and, I was listening to Metallica when I was in junior high. Like, the 80s were a really amazing time for rock music.
Yeah.
So that's what I grew up on. And then, someone took me dancing in the city and everything kind of swerved a different direction.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. And also I'm curious too about, because you remixed Mindless Self-Indulgence, a bunch of records for them.
Yep.
And you're known for creating dance remixes of popular rock and alternative songs.
Oh yeah. I mean, in the mid 2000s, I did a long list of, Fall Out Boy, Panic at the Disco, the Hush Sound, the Sounds, Good Charlotte. Like it was a lot of stuff.
How did that come about?
I guess it really happened because, no one else ever got it right, because they would get asked to do a dance mix of a rock song, and they would just take the acapella and then make a track. Well, that's not really a remix. And it's certainly not a remix of that song. So I would always stay really true to the verse, chorus, verse, like arrangement. And I'd make a dub so that, if I wanted to play it in the club, like it would make more sense.
And a dub is less vocals.
Yes.
It's a version with less vocals.
Oh, significantly less. Yeah. And, but I kept everything in a song format. And, 3 of my mixes, it was Fall Out Boy, Panic at the Disco, and the Hush Sounds, were on the Snakes on a Plane soundtrack.
Oh, really?
When like all of that was like swirling around and it was just like perfect timing.
Yeah.
So it was great.
So you approached it a fan of both of the genres, the rock genre and then the dance genre. So you had an approach that other DJs may not have had or didn't at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I've always had a super open mind to pretty much everything. So, it was never like a task to take a rock song and turn it into a club record.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like work for you. It's
No.
like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll do this all day, every day. And you had mentioned earlier about going dancing. You're from Chicago.
Correct.
And that's where you got introduced to the dance world?
Yes. I mean, it's a funny story. I mean, the first time I ever heard like house music, I was sleeping out for concert tickets. So
for who? Concert tickets?
NXS, actually.
No way.
So, I would have, it was really cold. It was a cold, like winter night. And I convinced my parents, I couldn't even drive yet. I convinced my parents to leave one of their cars in the parking lot so I could sleep in the car. So I didn't have to sleep outside. So I was in the car and I was flipping around radio stations and I came across WBMX in Chicago, which was an all house music radio station that started in like 84, 85. And so, I heard this music and was like, what is this? Like I heard Acid House and I was like, this feels kind of punk. Like this is very, very different from what I've heard before. And then it was the queer kids in my high school who took me dancing. Like, it was
I love that. Yay.
The kids in the drama club were the ones that took me to Medusa's, which was like an industrial / house club in the city. And once I went, I pretty much spent every weekend there for the rest of high school.
What was it like when you walked in for the first time to Medusa's?
Well, I've done a lot of reading and really enjoyed the deep dive of like the 60s and, knowing about the revolution and everything else. Like the second that I saw like a nightclub and like this reckless abandon dancing to like, Ministry and all these amazing Front 242 and It's a Reb, like all this amazing, like harder edged dance music. And I was like, oh, well, obviously this is the next like big movement that's going to shift culture. And I couldn't have ever guessed that it was going to be what it's turned into. But, when I saw that, I said to myself, I'm looking at something that is countercultural.
Yes.
It's subversive.
Yes.
It's anti-establishment.
Yes.
And for the most part, a drug culture.
Yes.
And all of that got kind of hosed down when EDM came along because they wanted to make it a little more like packageable. So they
for corporate sponsors.
yeah, for sure. And I mean, what they did was they took away all of the sharp edges. And I miss that, you know, like, but the underground is alive and well in this country. Yeah. And, you know, I play raves in Brooklyn that, you know, have over 1,000 kids at them and, you know, no address until like an hour before the party. You know, the decks are set up inside a U-Haul. So in case the cops show up, you just close the door on the U-Haul and drive away. And everybody scatters. I mean, it's, you know, there has to be something for kids who are, you know, they're alternative youth. They don't want to go to like Coachella and they don't want to like be a part of this mainstream. Everything is so mainstream and everything is so conservative now.
Yeah, and watered down and
yeah, just like not, I mean, you know, there's nothing edgy about like anything in popular culture right now.
What is it about the edginess of music that grabs people?
Well, I mean, you know, especially young kids. I mean, I feel like, you know, when you're young, you look around and you're like, okay, well, I definitely want no part of anything that my parents are into.
Yes.
And what's really funny is a lot of kids now, they don't want to smoke pot. They don't want to drink because their parents do that. Because their parents are like Gen Xers, and they're like, no, I don't want it. That's so lame.
That is so interesting. I'm seeing that, and I'm seeing reports about like being less sexually promiscuous.
Yeah,
staying together longer in long-term relationships.
I mean, if when I was a teenager, if my dad smoked weed, I would have never smoked weed. I'd be like, that's so lame.
I never thought about that till now. That's so true. Yeah, there's that. I was watching an interview with John Waters.
The best.
And he had said something like, the day that you find music that you realize your parents hate, that music becomes the soundtrack to the rest of your life.
I would agree with that. Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So you being in the Midwest, you grew up on the rock. Did your parents listen to metal and rock, or was that your own thing?
Oh, my parents were like super square, like, you know, Frankie and Annette, Beach Blanket Bingo, 50s, like, you know, super conservative.
Wow.
My parents didn't drink. They didn't like, you know, none of the things that I ended up getting sucked into were, you know, they were none of that.
How did they react as you started going down your path into this world?
You know, I don't think they ever understood it. I mean, I don't think they understand it now. So, I mean, like, you know, and I'm 30 years in. So, I mean, like, you know, it's not going to happen anytime soon.
Was the hair always part of the journey with you? Or when did that start?
You know, it's really funny. I always had short hair.
Okay.
And it wasn't until I hit my 30s and I was like, what haven't I done yet? And I was like, I've never grown my hair out, and I don't have a boss. I haven't worked for anybody since 2001. So, you know, I'm not going to get fired from my job if I grow my hair.
Yeah.
So I just grew it down to my waist, and it's been in various lengths since then.
And you're married?
Yeah.
When you started growing your hair, were you with your wife then?
No, I started growing it probably about 18 months before I met her.
Okay. I was curious, was this a conversation you had with her, or you just were doing it yourself?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I was kind of shifting out of the electro clash era and going more towards that kind of rock remix era. And it just felt natural to have long hair.
Yeah. When you were back to Chicago, so when you were going to Medusa.
Yeah, Medusas.
And that was your first introduction into the dance world. Mm-hmm. Where does that fall in line? Where does that fall in the timeline with the Warehouse when things first started?
So I'm always, you know, very clear about this. I was not part of the first movement of house music. That was a little bit before me. Because, you know, the Warehouse and the Music Box, which was the I'm more of a music box guy.
Okay.
I'll explain it.
Yeah, explain. I don't know
It's
about
very,
that.
it's very like easy to explain it. It's like Frankie Knuckles played at the Warehouse, and when people went dancing at the Warehouse, they wore their Sunday best. They were in like shined shoes and like really nice like suits, and the women wore dresses if there were any. And you know, like it was very yeah, it was very kind of like, you know, putting on the Ritz for Chicago. But then there was this other club, which was owned by the same guy, and he nurtured this kid called Ron Hardy. And Ron Hardy he kind of resonates a bit more with me because Ron Hardy was a risk taker. He was totally reckless. I mean, you hear tapes of him spinning, and it doesn't even make any sense. Like, I can't explain what he's doing, because he was just tapped into some other stuff. I mean, unfortunately, like Larry Levan in New York, you know, they both got into heroin and they're both dead. And they didn't even make it out of the 80s.
Wow.
So, but I mean, you know, Ron Hardy was like unafraid to play records. Like, I mean, there's a very famous story. There's a track by Future called Acid Tracks, which is literally the first ever acid track. Wow. And it was DJ Pierre and Spanky, and they were these kids from the South Side, and Roland had made this piece of gear called the TR 303. And so when they made this, it was a failure. Total failure. And I remember seeing in music stores, it used to come packaged with a 606, which was a drum machine, and they would split them up, and there was like one barrel of 303s and another barrel of 606s, and they were $19.99. They were worthless.
Okay.
And so it just didn't work. Like, nobody wanted it. It was made to be like a baseline accompaniment for like you to play guitar to. And, you know, these kids on the South Side ended up with one, and they're like, ooh, if we turn these knobs really crazy, it starts making this sound, which it definitely wasn't made to make.
I was just going to ask, it wasn't meant for that, right?
No, absolutely not. And, you know, much like all of dance music, you know, any good, you know, anything that ever came good out of dance music, it all started, you know, from black and brown queer culture.
Yeah.
So,
and you had just posted something on your social media about what has come from black culture.
Everything.
I
mean, like
all the good stuff.
There's not all the stuff I don't even like came. I mean, country music came from black people.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, every bit of music.
Can you say some of it's like R&B, soul, jazz, country, house,
blues. Like, you know, rock and roll. I mean, like, rock and roll was, you know, basically stolen from the people who actually created it. I mean, you know, all those early songs of Elvis and the Beatles and everything, they were all covers of like old
Tutti Frutti. Did you see the Little Richard documentary?
I haven't yet. I love him though.
It's worth it. It's a good one.
Talk about a punk rocker. That guy was on another level.
Yeah, interesting story.
I mean, I feel like there were these kind of people that you know came before punk that were punk. You know, I mean, Johnny Cash definitely falls in that category. Little Richard definitely falls in that category. I mean, what was Jimi Hendrix? You know what I mean? Like, he didn't listen to anybody and created his own universe of sound.
Yes. Wow. At what point did you go from becoming a fan to wanting to start making music and exploring that part?
You know, that's actually a good story. Like, I was going out, hearing dance music, and, you know, just having fun. I was, you know, a typical teenage kid, like, you know, drinking, doing a little drugs, you know, chasing after girls in the suburbs, like, you know, just stupid stuff. And 7 years in, I was like, this is becoming like, you know, something that I think I really want to be a part of. And I started going to raves a lot, and the people that were throwing the raves basically said, well, if you're gonna be here from the time we open the doors to the time we close them, you should at least DJ. Like,
oh, really?
Let's just make it official. Like, you're here every weekend. You're here from, we have to tell you to leave, basically.
Wow.
Because I couldn't get enough of it. And when, I basically started playing in the second rooms at raves, and I would play this severely eclectic mix of
severely
of old disco records, 80s, a little bit of industrial, hip hop.
Okay.
Whatever I wanted to play. I mean, if it would go from like, okay, I'm going to play this Van Halen song, and then I'm going to play this Howard Jones record, and then I'm going to play like Wu-Tang. Because I just didn't, I saw no boundaries. I never have. So, it was exciting to me to kind of push everything to see like what the limit was.
Yeah.
And, when you're in an underground scene, there is no limit. Like, no one's going to tell you like what to do. So I just like pushed it as far as I possibly could. And I found such joy in that. Like, just like the best thing in the world. Like I felt like I was DJing to like people in my basement. I didn't think of it as like a gig. Like I was just playing records for people. Like, hey, what do you think of this? Like, and that's what I was doing. And then, after years of doing that, like it kind of became obvious that I had to learn how to like hone the craft a little bit, because I didn't mix. I was just playing the records. I mean, I would segue and would do different things, but, I would never call it mixing. But, back then, everyone had a real open mind to it. And there wasn't really a benchmark, nobody was saying like, oh, well, you should do it like this guy. There wasn't a this guy.
And there weren't YouTube videos for them to see like crazy mixing and effects and all the stuff, some of the tricks that people do. It was like...
Yeah, I mean, in the original rave scene, I mean, there were regional people that were heroes to everyone in that city that the rest of the country had no idea who they were and still don't.
Yeah. When you said you couldn't get enough of it, I'm curious, is this like your personality? Were there other things prior to this that you couldn't get enough of, or was this kind of like a singular moment in your life?
Oh, it's really funny. Like, social media has brought me back to like old friends that I haven't seen in years.
Yeah.
And I've been getting a lot of these messages lately, and it's people remembering like, hey, do you remember like at recess in third grade, you used to make mixtapes for kickball? Like I would stand at the side of the kickball like field and would just hold my boombox and play like mixtapes for people. I would make like
to sell, or just because you wanted to share the music?
Just because I wanted to share the music.
Just to play
I mean, none of this had any sort of profit motive to me. I mean, it still doesn't. I don't think of this as work. Like, it's never felt like work. I've never accepted it as a job. Like, I do this because I love music, and I love sharing music. I love being able to like pull younger artists like multiple steps up the ladder that would take years, if not a decade, to do. That's what it's all about. Because I mean, I had mentors that did that for me and exposed me, like and got me like in places I would have never been able to play or to write or to produce. So it's all about. I mean, this music has to continue. I want to see, and even more important than the music, I want to see the culture continue. Like that's the part I'm so like adamant about, because I really want rave culture to be preserved because of
me too.
Because those original things, the anti-establishment counterculture, like that's all pretty much washed out of it now. Sans, what's happening in warehouses and lofts, but that's on a much smaller scale.
Right. Yeah, the underground is alive and well. I want to talk to you about the gay music scene, because me coming up as a DJ for the past 7 or 8 years, I've noticed. So when I first started out, I didn't know anything about circuit music.
Sure.
Yeah, I didn't understand that. And for listeners, circuit music is basically kind of like slang for gay festival kind of vibe.
Yeah, big
room. It's big room.
Yep.
Big room dance music festival, predominantly gay men. But what I learned when I first started as a DJ was there was 2 tracks I could go down. I could go down the club DJ route, or I could go down the circuit DJ route. I didn't really see anybody doing both, and I kind of saw separation between the mainstream dance world and then what was happening in the gay community. And it took me years to learn this, but because dance music started and gay culture used to be at the forefront of it, right? Pioneering it at the forefront of it. And then I've noticed that once it became embraced and adopted by the mainstream and took off, it continued to evolve the production techniques, the sound design, bringing in top liners, like very talented but I didn't see the what was happening in the gay dance world keeping up with that. And I used to go to a lot of these parties when I first started out in New York. I lived in New York for 7 years, and I noticed that people were going there for the boys. They weren't going for the music.
Oh, of course.
But then you go to like EDC or Ultra, and people are going for the artists. They're going for the songs. They want to sing. They want, But I'm noticing a couple things. I want to talk to you about this because there's so much about this I want to unpack. And when you say preserving the rave culture, I also am I really want to bring along the gay. I want to see more of our culture, because I'm gay. I want to see more of our culture embracing modern production design. Like, the sound has not evolved in like 20, 30 years, this circuit sound. And that bugs me.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there has to be some sort of evolution.
Yeah.
I play a lot of queer parties in New York City. I play for Suzanne Barsh, who throws, the biggest ones, and she's been throwing parties in New York since the 80s.
Yeah.
So I mean, she's got her finger on it, and I love playing there because I play literally dissimilar to everyone else in that scene.
Yeah.
So, I'm playing much heavier records and, playing Latin tech house records that like make people go crazy.
Yeah. They like it. It's
course.
just the DJs aren't really playing it.
No. And I mean, it's an easy trap because it's like, this is what I say about everything though. It's like, what are you in it for? Like, Are you in it because you want to be a big DJ? If that's what you're doing, then just play the records that everybody wants to hear and don't think any more about it, and you'll be just fine.
Yeah.
But if you're doing it for the music, you have to get people to trust you. And I mean, sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But, I think it's better to play what you think people need to hear rather than what they want to hear.
Yes.
Because, why play like, nothing but remixes of pop songs if you have the opportunity and the freedom to do the opposite? Like, why would you just like lean on these things? And whatever, I'm sure there's a lot of great DJs in West Hollywood that don't think twice about playing Doja Cat and Rihanna and everybody else numerous times throughout the night.
Yeah.
But I can hear that when I shop at like any clothing store. Why would I want to hear that in a nightclub?
Yeah.
And certainly not in an underground party.
Yeah.
So, I think everybody just needs to we're living in a very severely conservative time. Like it on the surface, it looks as you know, as the dingbats in this country, they call it woke. But like, you know, they look at it that way. But it's like, you know, underneath all that, it's super conservative, and I don't like that. I mean, look at me. Do I look like I don't have a conservative bone in my body? So, like, you know, it's. We're living in such a moment like that, and I think that people have gotten very comfortable, and you know they want to hear the hits. They want to listen to the music that all their friends listen to. Like it's all very like safe and stereotypical. You know what I mean? Like it's like you. Why would you listen to the music that you look like you listen to? Like that seems crazy to me. You know, everyone looks at me and they think that I'm like in a band or like, you know, and I'm like, no, I'm a DJ. And they're like, you don't look like a DJ. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's kind of the point. And, you know, I think that we're standing on the verge of you know, I'm talking about just music, but I think in kind of the bigger picture, I think we're standing on this precipice of a massive shift.
I think so too.
In consciousness,
yes,
in culture, in politics, in art, in everything. Like something has to give because this, you know, whatever this chapter of the human experiment that we're in right now ain't working.
Yeah, it's like COVID brought about a forced stillness on the world, and I think people had to sit with themselves for the first time in a long time.
And they started asking questions.
Yeah. And to what we were saying earlier in terms of the music, I want to see it continue to progress, the queer dance music. And for me, when I was starting out, I made a decision. I was like, if I could be a circuit DJ, I could do the sound, I could play the sound that's being played at these parties. I could easily do the remixes, put them out. But I was like, I think we can do better. And there's so much better music out there that I was like, I'm going to go in my own lane. So I started out in the clubs because I love more soulful music. I love deep house. I love that more deep vibes. I do love the big room stuff. And I just had a faith that eventually I would find a way to Are you laughing at remix?
No, I'm laughing.
Are you laughing at me or remix?
No,
remix. My dog.
The dog is so angry that he's getting no attention.
That's just him breathing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's not growling. He's just breathing. Oh, yeah. You're right though. He does want attention.
I think he does.
All right. Well, we're coming to the end of the first segment.
Oh, okay.
So we're gonna take a quick break, and when we get back, we're gonna get back here with Tommie Sunshine, my dog remix. I want to dive into some of your music.
Nice.
Right after this on Adobe Radio. Funny.
It was quite brilliant. He let the biggest fart go. Like when we first started going, and I was like looking at the rug, going like, did he have an accident in here? Or like what? That's severe. No, and then it passed, and I was like, oh yeah, that was a dog fart.
They're like, bring him, and I'm like, I don't know, you know. But this time I was like, I'll bring him, and I knew I was going to do some behind the scenes with you, and I was like, oh, it'll be some good video, you know, we'll capture him in the. But yeah, I do want to see the progress, and I do see it. Like the guys that are going to the circuit parties, they're also going to Ultra and EDC and Tomorrowland.
Sure. And
they love that music, and when they're at my gigs and I play that stuff, they go nuts. So they want it. It's just there's a bit of a delay between what's being booked at some of these gay festivals, queer festivals, and what they're wanting to hear.
We're rolling.
I mean, we are still rolling. Yeah.
Okay, great.
I can keep it going. Yeah.
I wanted to say
we can keep it going.
I wanted to say that you know, it's very odd. For some reason, and people do this all the time, like they see something in art, whether it's music or film or even in writing, like somebody does something totally innovative. They break all the rules, and they cause it's like a stick in the spokes. And instead of taking the cue that the way to have that kind of success is to do your own thing,
yeah,
they just copy it. So,
Yeah.
you know, this happens, you know, it happened in EDM a million times, whether it's Skrillex or Zed or Avicii or, you know, I mean, every one of these kind of shifts, Calvin Harris, like anytime there's one of those, like everyone just starts making music like them. And it's like, well, but there's already a them. Why do you need to do what they're doing? And and I'm saying it in reference to the circuit music, because if you look at where that music came from Peter Rauhofer, Club 69. It came from Junior Vasquez. It came from all of these artists that were making unbelievably, like, you know, way ahead of its time music.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of got real comfortable on the couch and never changed. And
that's what I'm talking about.
It's you know, I mean, Junior Vasquez, like, that changed dance music. Like those, like, really, really intense, like 12, 14, 16-minute long mixes of songs. Like, you know, people were having like religious moments on the dance floor to those records.
Yes.
And, you know, because no one had ever done anything like that before. And, you know, the lesson there is always, you know, be yourself, like, do what it is that you want to do. I mean, if there's anything of a legacy that I want to leave from my career, I want people to understand that you don't have to go by the system. You don't have to worry about, you know, just money and let that dictate your art, and to just do whatever it is you want to do. If you want to make a song in a different genre, do it. Like, don't ask anybody for permission to do it. Just do it.
Yeah.
And having that kind of like you really have, I mean, you know, it's for a lot of people, it's scary. It's scary to do things that like aren't the popular move.
Especially as a DJ, because, you know, it's so competitive and cutthroat.
Yeah. I mean,
so to take a chance, it could be extra scary to somebody.
But, you know, that was the thing that presented itself to me at years ago, 15 years ago, when I was doing the rock remixes and the blog house scene was kicking, and, all of that was great. And I could have totally rinsed EDM. I could have been in that system, but I didn't want it. I didn't want to have to play this parentheses of records at festivals. And I never wanted, the whole reason I went into art was so that I didn't have to follow any rules.
Yeah.
So it made zero sense to make what all of these other guys were making. So I just kept doing me during that process. And somehow people started to appreciate that.
Yeah.
They started going oh, well, these guys are all doing this, but he's just doing Tommie Sunshine. He's just over here in his own little universe. And, that's the only way to a fulfilling life, I think.
Yes.
You and I think if there's anything that's going on in culture now that is good, it is that, people are finally accepting and realizing that, if you're not living the way you want to live, and if you're not your true self, what kind of life is that? That's, you're not living. You're crushed by something that you think you have to do to make people happy, and that's all the worst. No one should be living like that. Everybody should get to be exactly who they are. And that means whatever you think it means. That could be political, that could be your sexuality, that could be your marriage, it could be anything you want. But, you have to live the life that you want to live, because we are not here for, we are finite creatures. Our lifespan is real small.
Yeah.
So we're not, my wife always says, we're not here for a long time. We're here for a good time.
Yes, love her.
And,
That's true.
it goes by fast, like all of a sudden, I'm 52 years old and like, I would have never in a million years thought that I would still be DJing, that I'd be traveling to DJ, that I'd be putting out. I mean, I'm making more music now than I ever have in any other point in my career. And, it's not because of like any mainstream success or because I've done like one thing that like made everything explode.
Yeah.
It's just consistency.
Yes.
And, I mean, they say, in order to be a master of something, you need to put in 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
I've
definitely put in 10,000 hours behind turntables for sure. And, and in the production situation as well. I mean, I'm DJing 30 years this year.
Wow.
And I'm producing for 25. So, I would hope that I'm good at it after all those years. Like it'd be pretty terrible if I wasn't. But that's all subjective, like, I mean, being in entertainment is kind of the same thing as like the fine art world. It's like you're only worth what someone's willing to pay you. And that goes for, when Basquiat and Warhol and Haring were all alive, they made some money, but they didn't make millions of dollars. And now their work is, the Haring exhibit in LA is the craziest thing.
Did you get to go?
Oh my God. Yeah, I went yesterday.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like the Sunday part of my trip. It was like, I'm going to that exhibit alone because I don't like going to art museums with other people because they like to talk, and it's like, yo, I'm like processing all of this like brilliant work. Like, so I enjoyed that. But, those guys, they weren't even particularly liked in their lifetime.
And I just want to point out the listeners, Keith Haring, they may not know his name, but you definitely know his art.
Oh yeah.
It's the pop art, it's the outlined style that started out on the graffiti on the subway systems.
Yeah.
The dog.
Yep. And
the joyful dog.
It's the dog, and there's like the kind of stick figures and the UFO, and it's like, I mean, you've definitely seen someone wearing a T-shirt with that.
Yeah.
Like, if you go out in any city and you're gonna see a Keith Haring something somewhere. But all of this it's kind of really at the end of the day, I find so much inspiration in Warhol, Basquiat, and Haring, because these were three people that the art world didn't take seriously.
Yes.
They tried, they tried to other all three of them because, Haring was gay, Warhol was gay, and Basquiat was somewhere in the middle of his gender euphoria.
Yeah.
And, they didn't want any of that. They didn't want those guys to like become the next big thing. They resisted it. And Warhol had to go to Europe and start like doing portraits of people and making money, and because no one in America wanted anything to do with what he was doing.
Yeah.
The same thing happened to Basquiat, and the same thing happened to Keith Haring. Keith Haring and Basquiat were slagged off as graffiti artists. Like, they no one thought of them as like, actual like fine artists. And when you look back with clear eyes, it's like, Basquiat's like that. Like if you ever wanted to see visually what neurodivergence looks like, it's Basquiat. Like, I mean,
visually.
Yeah, like disjointed
the
words
chaos.
and like, like drawings and just this very primitive, like both.
His style is very chaotic, primitive.
Well, I mean, both Haring and Basquiat tapped into this kind of primal, like, going all the way back to the original people, like, the stuff that Basquiat and Haring were doing, they look like cave drawings, you know,
Yeah,
like
they
it
do.
goes back to like the beginning of humanity. And it's like that's amazing. Like when you're like a brilliant artist and have a brilliant mind, taking things and reducing them down to like their most basic, recognizable like stuff. But, you know, I mean, that's the mountaintop. But where did those two learn that from? They learned it from Warhol. Because Warhol was like, hey, I'm going to take the things that you see in the grocery store and I'm going to paint them and you're going to pay me lots of money and I'm going to laugh at you. And yes, this whole thing is a ruse against you and fuck you. And that was, I mean, you know, again, Warhol was a punk, you know, like, and just that kind of perspective is so great because that's what art is for.
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear you say this. I've always looked up to Andy. I grew up in Pittsburgh.
Oh, amazing.
And I visited his grave.
I've never done that. It's too heavy. I can't do
so cool because he's in a public cemetery.
Yeah.
And I found his grave and I went to it and there were soup cans and stuff that people have left there. And just stand there at his grave, the tombstone, and to just know like he's right there, like right under me, right in front of me. It was profound. It was a very moving experience.
But you know what? He's everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, everything that we now know to be normal life was all like, he was a visionary. He saw all of this coming.
15 seconds of fame, that's blows my mind that he saw that.
I mean, yeah. I mean, what is he referring to? I mean, how long is a TikTok video?
Yeah.
You know, like, especially when it started, you know, they were more Snapchat than
and the
TikTok,
Vine,
but you know, like this very like short blast and you could get all of this attention. And what's that for? Like, you know, what does that amount to? But you know, he saw MTV coming, he saw the internet coming, he saw like all of these, you know, social media and all of these things. I mean, he would love all of this.
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
Love. I mean, you know, he would think the Kardashians and the Real Housewives were amazing. He'd want to meet them all because just like in the 80s and in the 70s and the 60s before that, like, he wanted to meet all of these like outrageous people, not because he respected them or liked them. He found them curious.
Yeah, he was just fascinated by
like
them.
Why does the world like attach themselves to this person versus everyone else? And you know, would probably stand there, say nothing, record the entire thing with a tape recorder, and like, you know, have no palatable like
expression
read on what's happening. But you know, that's brilliant. I mean, like it's so great to see like old interviews with him because like, you know, they'll ask him questions and he'll be on a talk show and for 20 minutes he only says yes or no.
Right, I've seen that.
Like shuts down every kind of foray into communication. It's the best.
Yeah.
And laughs while he says it because he knows he's like making whoever it is angry because they want to talk to him and he doesn't want to talk to them.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of that with Madonna in the early years when I saw clips of her.
Yeah. Well, they were friends.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, she got a kick out of it too. She got a lot of knowledge from
not the short answers, but just the kind of like subversion, like you had said earlier.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, and you know, it's very funny. It's like artists now, like they don't want to say anything.
And Prince, there's great clips with Prince doing that too.
Oh, I mean, Prince
just being super cheeky and
next level.
Yeah,
but you know, artists now are afraid of saying anything, posting anything, like, you know, they don't want to alienate anybody because they don't want to, you know, they don't want to mess up their cash flow.
Yeah.
So, which has nothing to do with art.
Do you think cancel culture will continue, or do you think it's going to get harder for people to get canceled?
Well, I mean, I'm not a big fan of that.
Me neither. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it does anything for anybody.
I think there's less of a grip, and I'm happy to see that.
I mean, should people like Harvey Weinstein be in jail? Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. But does it need to be talked about for a year and a half? No. Like just put him in jail. All of these things are put in front of us to distract us. That's what it is. I mean, the government doesn't have to worry about like what we're up to because we're fighting about what color we vote. They're like, oh, we're going to pit you guys against the other you guys, and while you're all mixing it up, we're going to do a bunch of fucked up shit in the background that you don't know anything about.
Yeah.
Because you're too busy fighting with each other.
We're going to buy shares in Lockheed Martin, and then we're going to sell a bunch of weapons to them. And
all of this stuff is like absolutely crazy. And I mean, I was, being topical, I just posted something on social media in regards to what's going on in Maui, in Hawaii. And, the president has said that, he's approved the relief for blah, blah, and blah, and was asked over the weekend, what he thought about the situation there. He said no comment.
Really?
Absolutely. And but the people who are on the ground in that, I forget the name of the town that got wiped out, but when we're being fed this kind of I'm going into tinfoil hat conspiracy theory moment.
Yeah,
but
I love it.
But we're being told that it's this way, and we're being shown the same 6 clips in a loop. And the people who are on the ground, if you go to TikTok, if you go to Instagram, there are people who live there who have lost their homes and experienced that horrible situation. And they're saying that the death toll is underreported.
Yes.
They say that there's more likely it's not 100 people, it's 1,000 people.
Yeah.
And, these people were driven. I put up a thing on Instagram because I found someone who had posted all these clips, and, people were getting out of their cars and jumping into the ocean to get away from what was happening on land. Well, a lot of people don't know how to swim. So inevitably, a lot of people drown.
Yeah.
And, the ocean is not, it's not a lake. You know what I mean? The ocean is moody. So, if there's a crazy fire and the wind is kicking, the water's a mess too.
Yeah.
So, all of this stuff that we see, and everybody has to remember this, when you turn on, doesn't matter what it is, if it's network television, if it's CNN or MSNBC or Fox News or whatever tells you the things that you want to hear, so that's what you watch, all of these companies are owned by very rich men who don't give a fuck about us.
Yeah.
So, and they're all arms of the government because they ask, when something is reported, right? It is either being given to a news station via the White House or it's given to them via the police. So that's not, you're just getting their interpretation of it. And then they're giving that interpretation to everyone who assumes that that's facts and that that's the only thing they need to know. And, asking questions, which everyone knows how to do, is how you get around all that. Because the one thing that the government does not want us to do is talk to each other. Because that's dangerous.
As we sit here right now.
No, but
talking.
Really,
Yeah.
You go back to the salons, through hundreds of years ago, where people would get together socially and they would talk about important things, and that by having social media and telephones and mobile phones are literally the most successful psyop that this country has ever participated in, because everyone is a phone junkie. Everyone's on the doom scroll, like just, looking at things that they don't need to know. And, it's nonsense. And, it's essentially rubbed out our third eye. Because, and that was the point. The point is just to make you dependent on the thing that gives you if you're gonna get, it's not serotonin. What's the other thing? Dopamine. Mm-hmm. So if you're gonna get, if you're gonna get dopamine from your phone, well, they're gonna just keep you hooked on your phone. Because then you're not going to ask questions. You're not going to
question authority.
Yeah, you're not going to talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah.
Like, you're never going to get the bigger picture. You're just going to get the one that's been like produced and crafted for you.
Yeah, but I do see people talking more. I see them asking questions. And to your point earlier, I do feel like there is a awakening happening.
I mean, there has to be.
Yeah,
I mean,
there has to be, yes.
What's going on right now is terrifying. I mean, I don't mean to be like an alarmist, but it's like, the climate is beyond fucked. I mean, like, we are responsible for this. Like, our lifestyle every day has caused this. Like, we are the ones that melted the ice caps. We are the one that caused the fire in Maui. Like, I mean, that's just how it is. It's neglect, and it's this self-centered existence where it's like, I want my Uber Eats, and I want my Netflix, and I want my Amazon to send me all of the things that I buy late at night while I'm drunk or high and forget that I ordered, and like all of these different things. Like, nobody wants to give anything up for change. On the big picture. Yeah. Now, there's always been, infidels who have lived outside the framework of acceptable society. And that number is shifting in real time.
Are you optimistic?
Oh, 100%. And
me too. I'm happy to hear that.
I'll explain why. Like, there was a time, most of my life, people didn't really go against, especially like in the mainstream, nobody ever went against the status quo. Like it was like, oh, well, we have this president now and things are going to be like this. And we would just accept it and live our lives and not, before the internet, nobody knew what was going on anywhere outside of their town they lived in. Because, if you were reading Rolling Stone magazine, you were getting news that was 3 months old. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not helpful. So, I mean, like, there was no kind of, it was very difficult to mobilize people. It was very difficult to get people involved in anything that didn't directly affect them. I mean, it still is, but then it was like next to impossible because there wasn't, online organizing, and you couldn't reach people via email and all these other things. So, but we're living in this moment now where it is not like radical on either side people that have the most to say about it. I always get into Ubers and I always talk to whoever's driving because I feel like the way to really get to know what's going on in this country is to talk to people who work real hard for a living. Like that's when you get the real shit. And you're going to get a good read of what's going on. And I had this cab Uber driver yesterday. She drives into LA from Orange County. From a couple of the things that she said, I could tell that she was like very right wing, and was talking about some crazy stuff. But what everyone doesn't realize is that we have a lot more in common than we do, not. Yes. And, that's been sold to us too. You know what I mean? Like that the divisiveness is a tactic. Like people are people. Like, it doesn't matter where you sit on the political spectrum. The fact that we don't have health care sucks. Like, doesn't matter what you think of whoever's doing whatever. Like, we're the only country in the entire world that doesn't have health care.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane. Like, this country makes so much money from taxes and from everything else. Like, there shouldn't be people unhoused, neglected, not being cared for. I mean, I played a gig in downtown LA over the weekend, and my mind was blown. Like, it's heartbreaking to see what's going on in this city.
Yeah, because it took place in Skid Row, right?
Well,
that area.
No, ish. But then I went to the art museum, which is also in downtown LA. But outside of the two largest art museums in this city, there were people sleeping on the sidewalk. And I don't mean like people that have been homeless for a really long time. These people look newly homeless.
And they're literally on the sidewalk. They're not even in a tent. Like, there's people literally just laying on the sidewalk with nothing. Yeah.
Like, no,
just out in the open. Yeah, it's
and of course, mental illness plays a bit into that. Addiction plays into that. But everybody sings the praises of Gavin Newsom like he's like some sort of like messiah. And it's like, well, you know what? Come to downtown LA and take a look around and see how great he is to everybody. And, I don't care. It's his fault. If this is happening on his watch, it's his fault that he's not doing enough to change that. It's heartbreaking.
It's so complicated because there's people in government making six figures and their job is to solve the homeless situation. But if they solve the homeless situation, then they're out of a job. So it's like, where's the incentive for them?
It's interesting. Like, and I'm not calling you out for this, but because it's something that everybody says. But just the term homeless is such a bullshit word.
Okay.
Like, because it's tied to capitalism. Like, it's like you don't own a home. And there's an inference in that where you're looking down on somebody for the fact that they don't have anywhere to live.
Okay.
So the kind of new nomenclature is unhoused.
Unhoused, okay.
Because that's what it is.
That makes sense.
You know what I mean? Like, this person at this moment just doesn't have a place to live. And it shouldn't be tied to capitalism. I mean, all of the problems we have right now from
because.
Oh, yes, 100%. Like, the reason that we have the climate disaster is because corporations just want to make money. And they don't care about human benefit. None of this matters to them. Like, I mean, I always say, even about, the government in this country, but it's the same with any other country. It's like, there is this illusion that people have a choice, like that there's this team and this team. And it's like, do you want to be on the blue team or you want to be on the red team?
Yeah.
Well, the red team and the blue team are the same team. I hate to break it to everybody.
Yeah, they have more in common with themselves than we do with them.
I mean,
we have more in common with ourselves than we do with the people that are in government.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. It's like they're working in tandem with each other. I mean, there's political theater that would lead us to believe otherwise, but it's like they're working after, they're going after one thing, and the only opposition that they have is us.
Yeah.
Like, we, the people of this country, are literally the opposition of the people in power. So, what's it going to take for people to wake up to this? It's like, do we need another East Palestine? Do we need another Flint, Michigan? Do we need another Katrina? Do we need another Maui? Like, you see these things happen and the government doesn't give a fuck about the people that are affected by these things. Like, how is there not, like, if there's a disaster somewhere in this country, I know there's FEMA and all this red tape bullshit, but if there's like a disaster on the scale of what happened in Hawaii, like, there should have been people there within 24 hours
Yeah.
to fix all of the problems there. I mean, we're going on what, 5-6 days now, and they're not getting the help that they need. And this is coming from people who are there, who are on social media saying like, okay, where are you? Where's the aid? Where's the food? Where's the diapers? Where's all the things that we need to live that you're not sending?
And have no comment on.
It's
The no comment, right?
I mean, but here's the thing, right? If we know that the government doesn't look out for us, and if we know that corporations don't have our best interests in mind, all we can do is make sure that personal accountability, our family, whatever that looks like, your close circle of friends, that's who you look after. And when you have the means, you help out anyone who needs it. Mm-hmm. So whether that's mutual aid, whether that's like, whatever that looks like to you, like you do that when, you have a good month, like you've got a little bit of extra money, like don't buy some dumb piece of garbage off the internet, like help someone. Whatever that is, you know what I mean? Like, and there's a million ways you can help people, and there you can help people without money. You know what I mean? Like, there's ways around all of this.
Yeah,
it's just that it's inconvenient to fix it, because when you fix problems, then the people who are the problem solvers don't make as much money.
Right. Yes.
And
yes.
I mean. But this goes so much deeper than politics. Like, this isn't a political thing. This is like a humanity thing. And when I look at my career and I think of myself as an artist, like the reason I got into this and the reason why I'm an activist is because, a lot of people don't bother. They cultivate these huge followings on social media and they don't have anything to say. Ever.
Yes.
It's like, there's barely a peep of any kind of like personal opinion
yes.
in these feeds from people. And it's like, and they're getting that from the top, they're getting that from their management and everybody else. And because, they're making those people a lot of money, so they can't say what they want to say. Well, they think they can't say what they want to say.
Yeah.
But here's the interesting thing, right? How did we let this happen? How did we, as artists, and this goes to everyone in a band, this goes to DJs, anyone in the arts of any kind, right? Our booking agents, our management, our PR team, all of these people, we don't work for them. They work for us. So why would you let these people that work for you tell you what to do?
Yeah.
You should be telling them what to do.
Yeah.
Like, you should tell them, like, hey, I'm going to talk about stuff in real time, and your job is to fix that. like whatever you have to do,
yeah, that's how it should be.
That's your job.
That is their job. Yes.
Yeah, your job is not to tell me what not to
You're
say.
gonna fix it.
But it's
it's true. It really should be that way.
I mean, this is crazy.
Yeah,
it's like, I mean, the one thing that astounds me, and I think it really, what opened my eyes really was Occupy Wall Street. Like when that happened in New York, there's something switched in my brain.
Oh, okay.
Like that was such like an invigorating moment. And I wouldn't even necessarily say that I was like super connected to it while it was going on. I mean, I knew of its existence, but I was very busy with music at the time, and I just wasn't tapped in the way I was when I was a teenager. I was very, very into like Amnesty International and Greenpeace and Earth Day going into the 90s. And then like, it kind of got a little washed out. But my wife and I were sitting on the couch and we were watching late night TV. And across the top of the TV screen, it just said, police have raided Zuccotti Park and have evicted all of the people who have been staying there. And I looked at her and I was like, I'm going. And we were in our pajamas. Like, we were not ready to go anywhere. I changed, put on shoes. She did the same. We were on that happened at 1 a.m. is when they went in and raided the park. And there was like hundreds of people that had been living in that park in the Wall Street part of downtown for months.
Yes, I remember.
And so we were on the ground at like 1:18. Like, we really like got it together. Because it didn't matter to me, even if I didn't necessarily agree with what they were doing. That shouldn't happen to anybody. Like, that's overreach to me.
Yeah.
And I mean, the New York Police Department is not dissimilar to the LAPD. They're a nightmare. And God forbid you're a person of color. They're a real nightmare.
Yeah.
So, I saw that. We went there. There was about 5,000 people walking the streets of downtown and then through, up above the neighborhoods above that. And we didn't stop moving from when we got there until like 6 a.m. And we were just going up and down streets, chanting as loud as we could and waking everybody up.
Yeah.
So they knew what would happen. And of course, the next day, barely a pip in any of the morning shows. No one, they talked about it for 2 seconds and they moved on. And I saw that and I was like, oh boy, this is moving in a direction that's not good, because it's abundantly clear that they don't care.
Yeah.
And, parlayed from that, it became Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown and all of these, all these different kids that,
Breonna Taylor,
keep getting killed by the cops because the cops just can't help themselves. And, as we say in the streets, there's no good cop in a racist system. So until they fix the system, like, you can't do the like, oh, it's only this faction of this. It's
system.
It's like, no, it's like the way that policing is done in this country goes back. I mean, do you know? I mean, here's the thing that we weren't taught in school. Do you know where the concept of a police department came from?
No.
The original role of the police in the United States was to catch runaway slaves.
Really?
Yeah, they were slave catchers. That was their job.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And then it kind of, as this country got its bearings, it turned into law enforcement. They branded it. They rebranded their slave catching ways and they rebranded it as law enforcement. But that undertone of, racist, belligerent violence is still very much intact, and it's very taught. I mean, here's the thing. This stuff is in the open. You can read about this. No one does. Like, this is our history. But this is what happens when we're taught selective history. Yeah. Like, doesn't matter where you end up on the political spectrum. Like, if you're not being given the full story, that's messed up.
Yeah.
And, kids aren't taught about Stonewall in school. I mean, they might be now. Yeah. But, I mean, in specifically progressive areas of the country. But like, I knew about that through friends and from reading books. I didn't learn that from school.
Yeah.
But I mean, just to put a end parentheses on the police department thing, like the LAPD and the NYPD have something in common. which again, everybody glazes over. Their strategic response team, which is like the people that get sent out for like terrorism, like when there's a terrorist threat, those are also the same cops that they put to like break up a protest, because you know, if you're protesting in this country, you must be like, you know, you must be you're on the verge of terrorism for exercising your rights. So that's who gets you know, sent out to these protests and these gatherings. And guess who trains both LA and New York's police department for that?
The military.
Yeah, it's the military, but it's not the military of this country.
Really?
It's the IDF,
Which is
the Israeli Defense Force,
what?
who have perfected aggression against the Palestinians.
Oh.
So they come, the whoever runs the police departments in these cities have the IDF come in and train the cops how to break up protests the way that Israel fights the Palestinians.
Oh my gosh. My youngest brother just became a cop over the past year.
That's rough.
Yeah, well, I worry about him, and I'm also curious to know somebody entering the force and then to watch, because I've known him beforehand, and
Sure.
then now he's going into this culture.
Sure.
I even noticed when I saw him for the first time after he went into the academy, and because I see my family maybe twice a year. They're in Pittsburgh. So I saw him at a function. Actually, from my other brother is a priest. It was for his ordination.
You've got a lot going on in your family.
This is the siblings. We've got me, a gay DJ. We've got a priest, and we've got a cop,
Wow.
IT, and then my sister works in healthcare. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, you got it all covered.
But I noticed when I saw him for the first time after he had been in the academy, there was already a shift. The way he carried himself, the way he was speaking, I was like, oh. And my uncle even made a comment to me. He was like, you're being he called him a douche, but he was joking. we tease each other a lot.
Sure.
So that's like common in my family. But I'm curious. And then he just had a baby girl, his first daughter, or his first child. So I'll be curious to see this balance of like, does the child soften him? And then while he's also in this culture of the police force, I'll be curious to see how that progresses.
I mean, you know, here's the thing. It's like,
and he's Gen Z, so I don't know.
I mean, it's very difficult. You know, this is why I have a little bit of it's not malice, but like, you know,
I thought you were going to say hope.
no. Like when I you know,
yay, hope.
when I look at, well, no, hope is wonderful, and if we didn't have hope, we'd be insane.
Yeah.
All of us. It would be anarchy.
Yeah.
Not that I'm against that, but like the thing that kind of really has always bothered me throughout my whole life all goes back to a single quote that I read when I was young in a book and has stuck with me my entire life. And it's a Groucho Marx quote.
Okay.
I would never want to be a member of I would never want to be in a club that would have me as a member.
Huh.
And that speaks to, you know, any kind of bandwagon, like attachment to anything. You know, I mean, there are plenty of people that listen to fill in the blank music, but don't necessarily look like they're into that music. You know, you can love country music. You don't have to walk around in a Stetson hat 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Like, you know, there's plenty of people, that are into pop punk, but they don't have like scene hair. You know, they're living their life. They're just normal people.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's very dangerous when you create your personality around whatever organization.
When your identity is tied to it.
Yes. I mean, unfortunately, that speaks to the priest and the cop in your family.
Yeah.
You know, that becomes your life. You become that thing. And, everything is filtered through that lens of what you do for a living. I mean, there's capitalism again. You know what I mean? Like, it's like your entire identity is like created around what you do. And I think that's probably what drew me to being so much of an outspoken activist in the first place. What kind of legacy is it? It's like, he was an amazing DJ / producer. Like,
Yeah.
That'll fade like before my body's cold. You know what I mean? Like that. I don't want that to be what people remember me for. I want people to remember me for being against the system, encouraging people to be individuals and to live their life and to fight like hell so that they can be whatever they want to be. That's what I want my legacy to be. All of this other stuff is great, but that's just what I do for work. I mean, I don't think of it as work, but that's what it is. I mean, that's what pays for my rent. So, I mean, that's a good thing, but that's not who I am. Like a lot of people in dance music, you would have a very difficult time having a conversation like the one we're having right now.
I know. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I have a lot of different people on the show, and not all the conversations are like this.
No, they don't want to dig. They don't want to dig in. They don't want to be vulnerable. They don't. I mean, listen, I'm not.
I saw you lit up when I told you about what the show is, and I was like, we love to facilitate deep conversations. I saw you lit up, and I was like, oh, yeah, this is going to be great. And I just want to say, while I'm thinking about this, like, first of all, you're very inspiring to me.
Thank you.
And I love that your life is your legacy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone's is.
Yes, it is. True.
I mean, people have no idea how much power they have.
Yeah.
In every way. Like, you can be whatever you want to be. You can change your job, you can change your religion, you can change. Listen, people wake up one day and they're like, you know what? I don't want to be married and have kids anymore, and I feel kind of queer, and they just check out and and they're a different person.
Yeah,
and that's okay. Yeah. You have that power, like everyone does, and it's just like you just have to learn how to harness it. Like I think the biggest thing, and this really speaks to dance music culture, not necessarily dance music, but dance music culture.
Okay.
Like when I got into everything, it was, everything was kind of centered around this psychedelic experience. Now it's very chic to go like on these like glamping trips to Peru to take ayahuasca, and most of that stuff is bullshit. Like you're not having like it's not a real shaman, and it's not like done the way you're supposed to do it. And I mean, you can do that, but you have to like really like dig and go through some shady places to find the real shit, because it's not legal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and you come back from that stuff profoundly changed. Like I have a friend who was, he was brought up in his family. He always had a difficult time with his parents. His father's a pastor. And, when the 2019 election came, like he was just like, I can't do this anymore. And he hadn't spoken to his family in like the 4 years of, said administration. But like when, I don't like saying the name, but like when finally his partner, who's now his wife, was like, this has to stop. Like you can't not communicate with your parents. That's crazy. Like what kind of life is that?
Yeah.
So she was a very skilled and accomplished psychedelic warrior on her own, and was like, I'm sending you to South America.
Wow.
And you're going to fix this. I mean, in the most kind way.
Yeah.
Like I'm
sounds
making
very
it sound,
loving.
Yeah, I'm making it sound way more like dictated, but it wasn't. And he was there for 14 days. which is a lot. Like, I mean, like,
Yeah,
people
2 full
usually have
weeks.
like 2-3 days, maybe a week. 2 weeks is a long time. And for 14 days, alternating one day to the next, they took ayahuasca, and the next day they took DMT. And the next day they did ayahuasca, and the next day they did DMT for 14 days.
Wow.
He
Damn.
came back from that trip, and he's a top to bottom completely different person. He's love. I mean, he was lovely before, but all of that rough, mucky garbage that he had was gone. He is the most open, funny, like always positive and always looking on the bright side of everything. This was like dissimilar to his personality before. So the reason I bring all this up is there's a reason. When we had these first experiences in the rave scene, which was the early 90s, I've always said, I actually say it in one of the EDC documentaries, all the ravers were the kids that ate lunch by themselves.
Oh.
And then
I hated lunch in high school. I hated
and
where to sit.
And we just all found this thing that we could all congregate around. So we were all the like weirdos and the outcasts and the freaks from, it was basically like if you looked at any city and you just lined up all the suburbs, and it was like one kid from every high school, from every suburb, like that's the rave scene.
Yeah, yes.
I mean, it really was.
Yeah.
That. And when you can take mushrooms, you can eat acid, you can do drugs like that and have, it doesn't change you. But that's because you didn't do it right. You know what I mean? Like, and there is a right and a wrong way to participate in that kind of environment. And when you are with people who you love and trust, and you have a psychedelic experience, especially if you do it multiple times like I have, but multiple times as in a lot of times, like not just like 3. But
same here.
But so when you're with people that you love and trust, and you really go in to the thick of it, you're in the weeds, and you are like in your mind. When you come out the other side of that, this is a term I didn't make up. This is what they call it. You experience ego death.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's 2 kinds of people in this world. There's people who have experienced that.
Yeah.
And there's people that haven't.
Yes.
And it is painfully obvious which side anyone is on.
Yes.
You can tell in 30 seconds of talking to somebody.
Yeah.
Whether or not they've experienced that.
Yeah.
Actually, with most people, you can just tell it from body language. They don't even need to open their mouth.
Yeah.
But when you've experienced that, one of the main and most important parts of this is that when you're looking at life, right, which is finite and as I said earlier, goes by fast. Like when you're looking at life, you're not afraid of death. So you live a good life because you have come to terms with the fact that you're not going to live forever. So you have to make your life count.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have, like, why would you get up in the morning and go to a job or wake up next to someone that you don't want to be with, or like, you know what I mean? Like all these things are, and this is most people live lives like that, but it's because they think they're going to live forever. And then, they're 70 years old and they're like, well, shit, now I can't even like get up off the chair to do anything. So I can't experience any of the things that I wanted to.
Yeah.
I would never let that happen to myself. And, that's something I think about it every single day. I wake up every day and I'm like, all right, What are we going to do today?
Yeah.
How are we how are we going to make a difference in the day? And whether or not that's simply being kind to, whoever's ringing up your groceries at Trader Joe's, or, it doesn't matter. It can be small. It's better if it is, because that's the thing, right? Like, if you can influence somebody's day, a singular person, and you can change their day, that's a big deal. And I get told that all day long. I'll say something that I don't even think is particularly profound or even like out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
And I'll say it to someone who works in a bookstore or works wherever. And they go, "Thank you so much for saying that. Like, you just changed my whole day."
Wow.
Like, I was having a bad day, and hearing you say that, like, I get messages like this on social media every day.
And that goes back to earlier what you were saying about you don't necessarily have to be spending money to help people.
No, I mean, like, yes, in addition to and as well as that helps, but it does. We do a lot of mutual aid in New York, and on Fridays in Washington Square Park, they set up tables, and whoever shows up helps out. There's no leader. There's no, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, if you've shown up to volunteer, if there's, like, if a table is falling apart, you fix the table. You don't need someone to tell you to fix the table. Like, you just fix it. And, whether you're scooping out food or whether you're talking to people or whatever it is that you get, the direction you get pulled in that night, like, that's what you do, because that's what you do. Like, you just help in any way that you can. And it's amazing. They give away, it's food, it's clothes, for the last couple of years, 3 years, it's been PPE, it's all of these different things that if you were unhoused, you'd need. So it's toiletries and new underwear and socks and all these things that people forget about, that, these people don't have a drawer to put these things. Yeah. So they don't get to do their laundry and, like, have clean, fresh things to put on. So if you're handing somebody who's been in the streets for more than a minute and you hand them clean socks and a clean pair of underwear, I mean, talk about changing somebody's day. That'll change their year. So it's important stuff. And there's plenty of rich people to pay for it. You know what I mean? Like, there's plenty of people that don't have the time to be on the ground to help people, so they just chuck money at it. Yeah. Which is great.
We need both. We need the money and we need the people on the ground.
Right. You can't, one doesn't work without the other. So, it's in whatever way anyone can ever help, you help. I think it's like a Mr. Rogers quote or something about, like, his mother explained to him that they're like, you want to be a helper in life. Yeah. Like, you want to be one of those people that, like, when you see something wrong, you just jump in and try to fix it. Yeah. In like, in the most kind of broad sense, like, not like you're in everybody's business telling everybody what to do, but if you see somebody, like, fall down, or you see somebody, there's a bad accident or something, like, you stop what you're doing and you help people. Like, and there's two kinds of people. There's, like, the people that'll help,
and the people that will video and just
not even
stand on the side or walk by. Yeah,
they won't even think twice about it. And it's like, that's rough. You know what I mean? Like, how the hell were you raised where you can see violence and brush it off? That's crazy to me. That's cognitive dissonance, like, you're just like, oh, that's not my problem. So I'm just going to keep on strolling here.
Yeah. I always try to just be useful. Like even on social media, in my job,
definitely
at my gigs. I don't play music. I play music I want to play, but I'm also just trying to be useful. I'm trying to be useful on the show. When I post on social media, I try to post something I think is useful. It's not just like, hey, here's another photo of me. Like, no.
Yeah.
But okay.
Team approved.
While we're on this subject, I have a surprise for you.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
You're gonna love it. So I'm gonna take a quick break to go to the bathroom.
Sure.
And then I'm gonna play. I have something I'm gonna play for you.
Oh my God. I hate surprises, so this
Do
better
you?
be good.
Okay, yeah, you let me know. Let me know. Okay, are you ready for your surprise? Okay. So on the show, we have a segment called The People's Perspective. So the way it works is I drive rideshare. And actually, there were 2 times in our conversation today that I was excited to show you this because you had talked about your Uber drivers and you were also talking about psychedelics. I'm like, ooh. But also I didn't want to cut you off because I was really enjoying the conversation, so I waited for this. But so that it's called The People's Perspective. I drive rideshare and it is totally random. I am picking up random people in LA and I ask them questions based on who my guest is for that week. So I did it. I drove rideshare, I picked up some passengers and I asked them about you. And this is what we got.
No kidding. Is it video?
It's video.
Oh, I can't wait to
be
see
up
this.
there. Okay. Okay, so this is the question. So Tommie Sunshine in another interview, he had this to say. The reason people fight wars and do stupid shit all over the world is because they haven't taken an ecstasy. They've never had a great night out with a DJ.
I disagree with the ecstasy. No, psychedelics. Psychedelics are so much more mind-opening. I think once you realize that you're not in your own little world and everybody's living their own lives, you become a little more compassionate. Putin has definitely not taken mushrooms.
I think the sentiment is if people take something that opens the mind, that maybe they realize things that they haven't realized yet.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So you're saying psychedelics would be effective?
Yes.
I always say like mushrooms, I always feel like I'm in the passenger seat, and acid, I feel like I'm in the driver's seat.
I always say acid, I'm in Atomic Blonde, and mushrooms, I'm in Lisa Frank.
Oh, I love that.
That's
An
amazing.
experience like that makes you realize day to day how much of the decisions you're making based off of serotonin or dopamine or stuff like that, and makes you kind of rethink, well, what's leading me to each of those decisions.
That's
So
where
it sounds like you guys agree with the overall sentiment that taking something to open the mind.
Yes.
And you guys, Tommie is going to see this interview. And you were at Milk last night? You saw him spin? Share, what was it like?
It was fabulous. I loved it.
So fun. I danced so hard. I was drenched in sweat.
She had a portable fan, too.
I had a portable fan because I was dancing so hard. It was so fun.
We were saying this morning before getting in the car, it was our favorite warehouse party we've ever been to.
Yeah.
Come on.
Isn't that crazy?
You know what? Remember how I've been saying this whole time, like, about, you know, how one little thing can, like, change somebody's day,
Yeah.
etc. I was under the impression that people didn't like what I played.
Oh, really?
Yes, and that completely changes my whole weekend.
Oh, yay.
That's amazing.
I'm so happy to hear that.
That's great. And I mean, listen, I would have loved it just as much if those guys were like, it was terrible and I'll never go back.
They literally said it was the best warehouse party they've ever been to, and they were visiting from Denver. They came in for the party.
That's crazy.
And what's really crazy is this is unplanned. Like,
Oh, you
when I picked them up, they literally thought I was just their driver. I hadn't even told them yet. And they were like, yeah, we went to this milk party last night. And they told me they went to the party. I'm like, you guys, I'm literally about to ask you to be on this show. And my guest this week is Tommie Sunshine, who was DJing the party last night. And it was just, it's crazy.
You know, it's really funny too, is like, I totally agree with them.
Okay.
Like, about what they said. And what in the context that I said that quote, I was talking about dance music specifically. Like I wasn't talking about like the big
Yeah, sure.
Obviously like psychedelics goes like far beyond like dance music culture. But like I was talking about how like when you're in dance music culture, like if you haven't ever taken ecstasy, you can't understand it the way that people who have understand it. Because what ecstasy does is it opens up, unlike psychedelics, like, ecstasy is not a brain high, it's a body high.
Mm-hmm.
When you're on a dance floor and you're like working through your shit on a dance floor
Oof.
on some really good MDMA,
Yeah.
like, you can like solve world hunger,
Yeah.
like on a dance floor
True.
if you're on good enough drugs. But like, it is really profound, the difference between, and when you walk into a room, you can tell immediately if the DJ that's playing has ever taken ecstasy, because there is an understanding of the dance floor that can only come from previous experience. You cannot teach that to somebody. There's no DJ school on the planet that can teach that to you. It's just, you have to live it. And the majority of people, and this is terrifying, the majority of DJs that are in this culture now have never waited in a line to get into a nightclub to see a DJ that they wanted to see.
Yeah.
They were not involved in the culture before they were making music or before they started DJing.
Yeah.
And,
That's so true.
they are not, talking about like, kind of big business and these kinds of things. I like to refer to those DJs. That's like big DJ. Like big pharma.
Yeah.
It's like, big DJ. The profile of big DJ is like, all the things I just said.
Yeah.
Like, they are not participants in the culture. They don't have anything to add to the culture because they're not from the culture.
Yes.
And that really is something that I try to put I try to make that point as often as I possibly can, because it's incredibly important. All these years, I think about, all the people that have come and gone through this scene. And, I learned all of the most profound things in my life from people at parties. Like, I didn't learn that in school. Didn't learn it from church. Didn't learn it from my parents. Like, this comes from like sitting in gravel in a gravel parking lot at 8:00 in the morning. Like, you don't even know what planet you're on, and you're having a conversation, and somebody says something that they don't think is particularly profound.
Yeah.
And that shit sticks with you for the rest of your life.
Yes.
But that's the beauty of it. It's like you have to. There are people that will walk into a warehouse situation or even a nightclub, and they're like, "This is too much." They can't process it. It's too hectic. A lot of people are like that. I mean, in every city, there is a shockingly low amount of people in that city that consistently go out. Like, the numbers would blow anyone away. Now, obviously, they change in real time, so it's not even like worth like, but it's like tens of thousands of people, not
out of
millions. Like, I mean, New York has 9 million people. Someone said,
I see.
Someone said to me once that in all 5 boroughs of New York, there is not even 20,000 people that are regular participants in nightlife.
Huh.
That's shocking.
That is shocking.
But if you think about it, if you're going to throw a festival and there's 50,000 people at the festival, it's like, well, everyone that likes EDM is going to bring their significant other, so there doubles that number.
Yeah.
And then if everyone brings a friend or two, that sorts out the other 10,000 people.
Yeah.
So, it's and a lot of people come to festivals from out of town. So it's not even that many people. It's so crazy. But that's why it's so important to me to make sure that the culture gets preserved, because it is so tiny. And there's one point that I always try to make, and it's this. When I started going to parties, especially raves, and even at Medusa's, starting at Medusa's, like, there was a small sliver of the people who were in the culture, loved the music, knew a lot about the music, and were very much like tuned into what was going on. And the rest of the people, 80, 90%, were just looking to get laid and to get fucked up. And, someone told them that they should go there. But that ratio hasn't changed. It hasn't changed from the 80s club scene. It hasn't changed from the 90s rave scene. There were just as many creeps at raves in the 90s as there is in nightclubs in 2023.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
which is why we get a lot of women at the gay clubs.
Well,
because they can just go and have fun and they don't have to worry about
exactly. And the reason, the funny thing is, it's like, well, I never saw that. It's like, well, yeah, of course you didn't. You were high as a kite. How would you have noticed, like, the creeps in the room? You know what I mean? Like, you're in the music, your eyes are closed on a dance floor. You don't know what's going on by the bathrooms. You know what I mean? Nor do you care. Yeah. So it's very funny to think that that's still the case, but it's like, this is why it's dangerous to get into nostalgia, because everybody thinks that what came before them was better. Everybody. Doesn't matter what scene you're in. Like, the kids that are listening to, I don't even have a current, like, answer to, like, what the pop punk kids are listening to now. But, they look back at Panic at the Disco and Fall Out Boy, and, they think, like, oh man, I would do anything to see, like, Warp Tour 2002. And it's like, well, you know what? Warp Tour 2002 had a lot of fucking problems too. Like, it's all your personal experience. And I think at a certain point when I was a kid, I realized that, like, because I was growing up in the 80s and, I was listening to, like, I was a bit of a hippie. I was listening to, like, The Dead and, Jimi Hendrix and Neil Young and all of this stuff that was like Laurel Canyon, like, hippie vibes and heavier rock like Zeppelin and Queen and stuff like that. But, like, I just kept thinking, like, oh, I'd give anything to be at, whatever concert that happened in 1977. But then all of a sudden I started going to concerts and I was like, this is amazing. And there's no way that, like, this is any different. Like, the feeling that I'm having being at this concert is not dissimilar to what any other situation is. So as time went on, my interest in nostalgia really waned. And I think the most dangerous thing in the world is nostalgia, because people stop progressing. Like, these are the people that are still, like, I don't even want to pick a band because I have too much respect for everybody that's, like, still at it.
Yeah.
But it's like, you've seen fill in the blank band like 10 million times. Why would you go again? Like, what? I mean, I get it, and I'm happy they do, because there would be no, like, gig economy if this didn't transpire.
Yeah.
But it's really shocking to me that people rarely evolve their music taste. And there's two brilliant men, Jimmy Cowdy and Bill Drummond. They had a project in the 80s going into the 90s called the KLF. And they had a little bit of pop success, but like, you know. Anyway, they're these two very, very brilliant. I wouldn't even call them producers because they're like, you know, they're more raconteurs than they are producers. Like just real rebel rousers. And they wrote this book called The Manual, How to Have a Number One the Easy Way, which is one of the best books ever written about the music business.
Okay.
Like it is so steeped in hilarious like stories and like it just gets it so dead on. And obviously things have changed. So they're talking about more of like going into the studio environment, like, you know, big mixing desk and a vocal booth and all that stuff. So that's kind of faded a little bit because things have changed so much. Now everybody's studio is a laptop. Mm-hmm. So, but if you just can get over that little switch, like there's just such brilliant nuggets in there. But the best point that they make in the book is that people's music taste almost never progresses past their highest point of education. So if somebody is in high school and they don't go to college and they get into the trades, they're going to listen to what they listened to in high school for the rest of their life. And if you go to college, you're going to have these profound experiences that you're going to remember this nightclub and this place. And then that's the music you're going to listen to for the rest of your life.
Wow.
That's typical people, like people that are not like music fans or music lovers. You know, like you think about, you know, most people, if you ask them, and this has been tested a million times and done a million times, if you ask most people what they listen to, you know, in previous decades, they would say the radio. The radio and what my friends listened to. Then a few decades later, it was whatever was on MTV and what my friends listened to. And it's like the algorithm.
Yeah.
Like it's, you know, you put on a song, and then you just let Spotify like spoon feed you music, and you're not picking what you're listening to. Like the algorithm is picking what you're listening to, and that algorithm is created by major labels so that you're listening to the stuff they want you to listen to. So it's not dissimilar to the radio anyway.
It's a lot of passive listeners.
Oh yeah. I mean, most people don't even understand that Spotify has playlists that are curated that you can like go.
Yeah, they don't know. I mean, we know because we're the ones putting the music out.
You know, they hear a song somewhere, whether it's on a TV show or in a commercial or where the other crazy places that people know. You know, they ask their phone, "What song is this?" when they're in H&M, and they get turned on to this band, and then they go home and they put that band's song on, and then they don't touch their phone for 3 hours, and it just plays music.
Yeah.
And you know, that is, I mean, that's wonderful for discovery if you actually give a shit about that. Mm-hmm. But if you're a passive listener, like, you know, it's the furniture. It's just background noise. That's
interesting. I'm experiencing this right now. My first single that I told you that went out on Liftoff, it's been increasing it's at 3 million streams.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's definitely growing, but it's because of the Spotify algorithm. Like Spotify radio loves the song, and so it's great. And I'm super grateful that my first release is doing well. But I also know they're passive listeners. Too, at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, you know, this is why it's so incredibly important to engage with fans, because I know an endless amount of people who have songs that have hundreds of millions of plays on streaming,
Yeah.
and nobody knows who the fuck they are.
Yeah, it's crazy. Go on their social media and
They have no presence.
You would never know on their social media that they have the streams that they have.
But this is what happens.
There's definitely a disconnect there.
Well,
Yeah.
they're the casualties of
Yeah.
streaming. You know what I mean?
They don't have to be though.
I mean, we're all casualties
are.
of streaming, but like,
But some of us are more proactive or trying to find a way to connect them more.
and again, I was saying in the car, like, when you think about it, right? Like, yeah, it's great that things do well when you put them out. Spotify made the belligerent error of making play counts public. They're the only platform that
That is
does
wild. Yeah.
that. Amazon doesn't do that. Pandora doesn't do that. Apple doesn't do that. None of the other streaming situations make the numbers public.
Yeah.
But here's why that sucks. If you go to a band's page looking for a song, like you've already heard a song by them that you like, when you open up their Spotify, the first thing you're going to listen to is whatever has the highest play count.
Yes.
Everyone does that.
Yes. Yes.
And in the 5 minutes it takes to listen to the song, you probably forget about the one you liked. And rarely, if ever, is the highest play count that an artist has, that's not their best song. It almost never is. It's just the one that did the thing. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, it is not representative of them as an artist. It's not representative of their body of work. Like, so that one keeps going and keeps getting bigger and keeps people from listening further into the stuff that you've done. So it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, it's both. Yeah.
Like, it's wonderful to have, people listening to something. Like, who doesn't like that dopamine? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, of course, it's great to know that people care. But the underlying part of all of this, for me, is that music and art is not a job. It's not a career. Like, I do things in the course of a day for my record label and for my brand, as much as I hate calling it that.
Yeah.
But that part is work. But creating music and walking into a venue and playing music for people, that's not work. That's like that. I do that stuff. I'm in the flow. Like, I am tapped into the universe. Like, being sober 18 years, like, that is when I get high. When I play records, I am not on the planet. Like, do not try to talk to me when I'm playing, because I let my mind go completely untethered. It makes me play better sets, and I don't get that from anything else. I don't smoke weed. I don't drink. I don't get those departures. So my vacation from the horrors of daily life is music. So, and I know it's not like that for everybody, but getting those experiences, right? Creating that music, making those choices to rock a dance floor. That's the art. That's what it's about. When you start getting into the gnarly stuff of like touring and algorithms and, single sales and all of this other nonsense that businessmen worry about, like, I don't care about any of that. I mean, I understand very clearly that I am privileged to have that perspective. There is a lot of talented people in the world who work a lot of really hard day jobs, and people will never hear their creations. the most talented producers that I've ever known and the best DJs that I've ever heard, nobody knows their names. I mean, it continues to be that way.
And sometimes, I want to ask you a question on this. Sometimes they could be an unknown guy stocking the shelves at a grocery store,
Absolutely.
and you get tipped off about his music.
Oh, do you want me to tell that story?
Yes, I would love. Yeah, I want to highlight this.
Yeah, you
It's
know
so
what?
fun.
This is probably like essential to getting people to understand kind of like my connection to the mainstream. If I ever had a brush with mainstream,
Yeah.
it was this. So back in the MySpace days, I sound 100 saying that, but like, you know, in the MySpace days, and it was the very beginning of blogs. Like the blog culture had only just started. So, you know, that was all coalescing into this really exciting moment. And this was 2005. So this is like a good 4 years before like EDM even became like a consideration. But I was on this blog and they posted this kid's MySpace page because unlike most social media, MySpace was very music centric. Like when you had your profile, you, even if you were not a musician and had absolutely no connection to, you know, to making music or whatever, you could put a song on your page that you loved so that when people came across your page, they would hear something that they could identify with and they could get to like know you better by the songs that you chose. And everyone I knew like really like went over in their head like what they were going to make their song, right? So it being as music centric as it was, if you were an artist, you could put a player in your page and then you could put like multiple songs. And this blog had written about this kid who was a Scottish kid. He was stocking shelves in a grocery store in Dumfries, Scotland, which is the southernmost tip of Scotland. Fun fact. But anyway, this kid had these songs up. And I was like, I've never heard anything like these songs. Now, this stuff is dissimilar to the stuff he makes now. And it was even dissimilar of the stuff that he made on his first album. But it just had something. Like there was just something about it that really like connected me and resonated with me. So I reached out to him and we used to speak over Skype when Skype was only audio. Again, 100. But like, you know, this was Skype wasn't always video. So we would talk via the computer, like over Skype, because, you know, you couldn't call someone in Scotland, not in 2005, you know, it would cost a fortune.
Yeah.
So anyway, we would talk and we got to know each other a bit. And I signed him to, I've had a number of imprints over the course of my career. And I had this imprint called Xylophone Jones, which is a funny name. But I think a friend asked me in a Kinko's, we were making like a zine in the 90s. And they just out of nowhere said, if you were a cowboy, what would your name be? And my instantaneous response was Xylophone Jones.
Wow.
And they said, you've got to use that for something. That's too good. And I was like, I'm going to name my record label that. So I had gotten a distribution deal in Europe to press vinyl. And so we called it XJREU, like just shortened it up and just rebranded it for Europe, right? So the first signing to that record label was this kid from Scotland, who you all know as Calvin Harris. And this history has been rewritten a bit, as things almost always are.
Mm-hmm.
I love his longtime manager, but his manager says that he discovered him on the internet, and it's like that is also true.
Yeah,
but there's a backstory before that. So I signed him to a 3-record single deal to my label, and he had done the first record. We put it out. It did all right. And he sang on that song. It was very funny. The song was, I Want to Be the Front Man in the Rock Band. And it was like very cheeky and was like made to be like a lampoon of like bands. And I remember I would play it and my wife was like, this is not good. I don't like this.
she's like, I don't get it.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah.
Like she was like, I don't see what you see in this kid. And I was like, I don't know. There's something about it. Like he's got this unique approach and he's taking risks and he's doing things that no one else is doing. So I stuck with my gut and I put the first record out, and then we were getting ready to put the second record out, which was a song called Vegas, ironically enough. Mind you, this is 2005.
Yeah.
Long before he had ever stepped foot in a hotel in Las Vegas, let alone.
And there was no Vegas like we know it now.
No, I mean, like, never thought that he would be the highest paid like entertainer in Las Vegas in the dance music scene. Yeah. So, this was all a premonition. It's really crazy.
Wow.
And the song was like, I got my car and my wheels and my ride, like when I go to Vegas. And he's like singing about Las Vegas, having never been there, living in this like small town in Scotland. So I think
he was already visualizing.
I think what I really liked about his music was that I could tell he was a dreamer.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Like I connected with that. Like I loved the idea of him saying and being vulnerable enough to say, I want to be the front man in a rock band. Like who was saying stuff like that? And I mean, forget about dance music. No one was saying that in any form of music. So there was this like realness to him that I saw right away. And we were getting ready to put out the second single. And in the background of this situation, he was sending me all of these demos that were not dance records. They were pop songs. So I have the like rough demo working versions of Girls, like all the big hits from the first record.
Wow.
Because he was like workshopping these songs. And I was like, selfishly, I want to sign these because I think they're amazing. But you need to sign these to a major label. I've always been like very honest with anyone I've ever worked with in dance music. Like, it's just, I'll tell you what's up.
Yeah.
Like, and if I know that I can't give these songs the distribution and the love that they deserve, I'm going to encourage you to sign to a major and like become a star. And so I did that, but he kind of failed to mention in our conversations. I was touring a lot at that time. So like, our conversations were few and far between. And I had seen in like Enemy or something, which is like a thing from the UK, like they had written about how he was in the studio with All Saints, which was like a big girl group from there. But then he was in a writing room with Kathy Dennis, and then he was in a writing room with Kylie Minogue, and I was like, huh, that's interesting.
Something's happening.
Yeah,
here.
like this is happening very quickly, like in real time. And so he had signed a deal with Columbia in the UK, and they had already printed his CD. And they asked him, this is like a month out from the album release. They were like, you don't have any like outstanding like record deals or anything. And he was like, actually, and they were like, you've got to be kidding. Like, how did you never mention this? Right. So he was like, I'm signed to this record label in New York, and I've put out one of 3 singles that I signed the deal for. Well, Vegas is on the album. So I already had the song mastered. It was all ready to go. And now I've lost it to Columbia. So Columbia comes back and they're like, we need to buy out his options, and you need to make this record disappear. The Rock Band record. It has to come down from Beatport. Now, mind you, this is pre-streaming.
Yeah.
So
it was easier to squash things then.
yeah. It's like, well, I mean, it's still easy, but it's like, you know, it didn't have the attention that everything has now. So they were like, you have to take it down off Beatport, and you have to destroy any remaining copies of the record.
Okay.
I was like, okay, not happy about that, because I really believed in this kid. Now, I don't think that he made a bad decision. I don't hold a grudge. Like, I totally understand everything that transpired. However, there was this moment where I had the upper hand, because they were about to release a record with a song that I had already signed. That's a problem.
Yeah.
So my manager at the time, who was super aggressive, got into this like weeks-long fight with Sony over the money. Well, I'm not going to say how much it was. It was a lot of money, especially at that time. You know, it wasn't 6 figures or anything, but like, you know, it was more money than I had ever seen in my entire life at that time. So, you know, and that was releasing him fully from the record deal and making all the previous stuff vanish. But there is an artifact of this on the internet, and I'm very happy this exists. And I had nothing to do with this. Full disclosure.
Yeah.
There is a Discogs entry for the record. There's actually 2. But there's a Discogs entry, and the person that got the promo clearly got it from me at like Winter Music Conference or some other way. And they posted the one sheet that was inside the record. And it's one of my favorite things that I've ever written, because I basically, the short version is, I say, like, you know those times where you're listening to a demo and you like look over your shoulders to make sure that like no one else hears what you hear?
Yeah.
And you can't believe that this is like ended up in your hands. That's how I felt when I first heard his music. And I knew that he was going to become like a star.
Yeah.
I mean, to the extent that he has, I wouldn't ever guess that. But we still text each other.
Yay.
We're still friends. I mean, every time we see each other, it's great. You know,
yeah. Wow. What a ride.
But I mean, you know, again, what are we in this for? You know what I mean? Like, do I always, I mean, you brought it up. I didn't bring it up.
Yeah.
So that's the difference. It's like I'm not hanging my name on his career.
Yeah.
Like, and nor should I. But most people would make a point of telling that story.
Oh yeah, it would be in their bio. It would be on their one sheet.
Which
Which
it's never been.
I just knew about it because I watched a previous interview you had like 12 years ago or something, and you mentioned it, and I thought, oh, that's interesting.
And he wasn't even that big 12 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not like now.
True.
I mean, he had like big dance records 12 years ago.
Yeah.
Now he's making pop music
Yeah.
that like goes #1 in multiple countries all over the world. And well deserved because they're killer songs. The one thing that people don't know about him is that the Rihanna song, and this is where the majority of his wealth has come from. He is the singular writer of We Found Love.
I didn't know that. Wow.
How many pop songs are one writer?
Or even 3 or 4. Like they're usually
It's
7.
It's usually 10 or 12. It makes no sense.
He's one. Wow.
He wrote that song, and he was coming in to Rock Nation.
Okay.
Rock Nation basically had like built a partnership with 360, which is like the management company that he's been in the whole time. So there was some strategy, and they were like, okay, we have this artist named Calvin Harris. He's poised to like go bigger, but we don't know how to do it. And Rock Nation was like, why don't you do a song with Rihanna? And the real flex is that song is not Calvin Harris and Rihanna. It's not even Rihanna featuring Calvin Harris. That record is Calvin Harris featuring Rihanna. That's insane. She was huge by then. So for her to take the back seat to him, talk about optics.
That's wild.
He was catapulted into the stratosphere with that record.
Yeah, he was.
Amazing.
Yeah. That's a great story. We should end there.
Yeah,
That's a great place to end. Such a pleasure having you on today. No, it's fine. It's fine. Such a pleasure having you on. Adobe listeners, this was a 2-hour conversation. We couldn't air all of it on the radio, but the good news is that the full video version of this conversation is available on streaming. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. You can watch it there. And also, Tommie Sunshine's my guest, and check out his social media. We are also linking to it in the descriptions online.
Oh, great.
Yeah, we'll be linking there. But this was fantastic. Such an honor. And I'm really grateful for your time.
I'm grateful to be here, and that clip that you showed me was next level. Like that that is so great. Because, you know, as an artist, you never know. Like, you never know how people take what you're doing.
We need to hear it. We need to hear it.
Yes. And I mean, if there's one thing that I can just share with everybody that I think is really important, like, go out of your way to tell people that you like, whose music has like changed your life, influenced you, or if you just like it a lot, but tell them that.
Yeah.
Like, you would be shocked at how much that doesn't happen. You would think when somebody's like, you know, a David Guetta or a Tiesto or whatever, that they're just hammered with like fan mail. I mean, they get more than I do, but it's shocking how low the number is.
Yeah, it's like the pretty girl that never gets asked out.
I mean,
People they just assume, oh, she knows she's pretty and she probably gets all this attention, but then she goes through high school feeling lonely.
Every single time people, when they do get the courage to come up to me, to tell me stuff, they say, I'm so sorry. I know you hear this all the time.
Yes.
And I'm
people
like,
do say that.
and I'm like, no, I don't.
Right.
Like, and I'm not looking for that. Like,
Yeah.
you know, but it's, and I always tell them, you'd be surprised. But there was a great moment at the Haring exhibit. I had just completed walking through the exhibit, and I went upstairs to the permanent collection in that museum, which is astounding, by the way. And it's free to get in there. There's no admission to that
It's at
museum.
the Broad in downtown Los Angeles.
Yeah. And they have a breathtaking permanent collection. So I was upstairs because I wanted to see the Basquiats and I wanted to see the Warhols, and which they have like an insane number of both.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah.
I mean, there were Warhols in there I'd never seen before. There were Basquiats I'd never seen before. But I was looking at one of the Basquiats that I had never seen, and I was like standing there like really looking at it. And all of a sudden I heard, "Excuse me." And I'm like, I turned, and this girl was like, "Are you Tommie Sunshine?" And my mind was blown, because here I am standing in front of this painting by, an artist who, I could only ever dream of achieving what he achieved.
Yeah.
And somebody recognizes me and wants to take a picture with me. And I said, well, let's take it in front of my favorite Basquiat, which ironically the museum owns. He did a painting called Obnoxious Liberals, which is my favorite painting of his. And I was like, let's take it in front of this. But, you never know. You never know what's going to happen. And I just thought that was so great. But that almost never happens. I mean, it does sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's few and far between. So, take the time to let the people who make the music, the films, the books that if anybody out there still reads books, I do. I don't know if anybody else does, but, reach out to those people. Tell them that if the director of a movie is on social media, tell them how much you enjoyed the movie.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, yes, it's awesome that Greta Gerwig has made $1 billion at the box office with Barbie, but how many people do you think are DMing her, telling her how much they love the movie? Probably a lot, but it's
not as many as you would think.
It's not as many as you think. Like,
it's so important to share. Yeah.
But this isn't just art stuff. This is life, like you have to tell your friends how much they mean to you. You have to tell your partner how much they mean to you. You have to tell your parents how much they mean to you.
Yeah.
Because when you don't, and the human experiment on them expires, then you have to cart that around for the rest of your life. And that sucks. I've experienced that. Like, I've had friends that passed, and, it's always like, oh, if I only had, it causes all kinds of baggage. So in real time, just tell people.
Especially artists. We need to hear it.
Just share.
I was on a date last week, and the guy told me that I had produced music for a New York Fashion Week runway show.
Nice.
And I sampled Paris is Burning audio in the show.
Amazing.
But he told me that this was like 7 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me that seeing that show, the music in that show, inspired him to pursue his career in modeling and fashion. I was shocked.
It's amazing.
He's like, yeah, that's the show that made me want to get into it. I was like, oh my God, I'm so happy. Thank you so much for sharing that, because it really meant so much to me.
I mean, this is really, and just to put a punctuation mark at the end of this, we've talked about so many different angles of this, but like, it is really important as an artist to not hang your hat on the way that your art is perceived.
Yeah.
Because you never know. I mean, like I said about the clip, I was unsure that transmission was successful that night. And wow, to have people say that the music was incredible and that it was their favorite warehouse party that they ever went to and that they danced until they were soaked, and all of this stuff is incredible to hear. But if you base your choices around that, you're going to be sorely disappointed, because there's going to be a lot more gigs that you play that you think you just like spoke the word. And this is, I always say this, and I swear I'll stop talking.
I know what you mean.
But when this is 100% of the time, it's this way. Anyone in a band will tell you this. Anybody who's a performer of any kind. The nights where you feel the earth move when you're performing, nobody cares.
Yes.
At least you think that nobody cares, right? The nights that you show up to a gig sleep deprived,
Yes.
sick, your back hurts,
Yes.
there's a million, you ate something at dinner that is funky and it's not working for you.
Yeah.
All of these things, those are the gigs where there's a line, like a receiving line to talk to you at the end of the set. And you're like, how? Why? Like, I didn't think this was a good gig. Why do you think it's a good gig? And it's so you cannot make your identity and your artistic choices around how it's received, because that's too many variables. And the only time that you have complete creative control is in the studio. Because it's your song, you're making all the choices, and nobody hears it until it's the way you want it to be.
Yes.
That's where you can control things. Once it's out into the world, you can't make Carl Cox play your record.
Yeah.
You can't make, whoever support it. You can't, you don't know that Mix Mag is going to pick it as one of the best records of the year. I mean, it's great when these things happen, but you can't base anything on that. So that comes back to really making sure that when you are in the studio and you do have the control, that you're not bowing to the peer pressure of like, what's the hot music at the moment, and like, oh, well, this is the number one record on Beatport and it does this, so I need to do this.
Yes. Yeah.
Like,
that's not the way. Yeah.
The joy. I mean, obviously, I love to play records. It's incredible to me. Like, and seeing people and have this connection with people that are dancing, it's special. Like, it's really a beautiful thing. But when you're in the studio and you make something that you absolutely love and you don't hang that on anything else and you put that out into the world, it doesn't matter if nobody listens to it. You just made the best thing of your career, in your opinion. But all of this is life in general. It's all luck, happenstance, being in the right place at the right time. Like, it's nice when you have talent. That helps. But there's a lot of talented people. I mean, Los Angeles is like, I could go outside and throw a rock and I'm going to hit someone who's immensely talented.
I know.
Like,
I was like grocery shopping the other day and this woman was just humming to herself and I could tell she had an amazing voice.
Yeah.
It's like, wow.
And, this is, commercial. What is commercially viable and acceptable shouldn't have any bearing on a listener. It shouldn't have any bearing on an artist. Like, and a producer's job is just to make sure that the artist's vision is executed properly. I mean, sometimes you're in with like Rick Rubin, and it's like, okay, well, I'm surrendering myself to you because Magi, the way. That's different.
Yeah.
But you also have to get to a certain point in your career to get that opportunity. So when you get to that point, you're like, you drive. I'm going to be in the back seat. You drive, and you're happy to do it.
Yeah.
So it's if anything that I want anyone to take away from this conversation, it's just please, for the sake of humanity, live your life. Do what you want to do. And don't let anybody tell you that what you're doing isn't good or right or the way you should be living, because it's all nonsense. It's all conjecture. Like, that's, as the Big Lebowski would say, well, that's just your opinion, man.
Yeah.
Because that it is. Like, just be yourself. There's power in that. There's a lot of power in that, actually. So
that's where all your power is.
Yeah. Harness the power.
Yeah.
Be yourself.
Tommie Sunshine, thank you for coming on Life Rhythms.
Thanks for having me.